What if I told you that Scream was butchered for being too sadistic? Or how about Dan's death from motorcycle in A Nightmare on Elm Street 5 was cut for being too disturbing? Well, today folks, we're going to take a look at 5 more disturbing scenes that were cut from horror movies for being too brutal. Poltergeist. So in the movie, we actually see Diane get pulled on the ceiling up and around, but the scene was actually supposed to go on for a lot longer. In the actual cutscene, spider tentacles did come out of the wall, which we do have some photos which we will be showing here in a moment, but this scene was cut because it went a little bit too far. Mike Wood and Mitch Suskin, the mechanical effects supervisor and visual effects supervisor respectively, they actually spoke about this cutscene in a Cinefex article in 1982, and this is what we got from them folks. At times, we got overwhelmed by fun effects and audacious ideas, possibly more than the film required. The one scene that sticks in my mind is where Diane is pulled up the wall, across the ceiling and down the other side. During that, they were going to be kind of staying in her path, something foreshadowing the closet turning into a mouth. It was pulsating, organic, ugly thing. The concept was eventually discarded, but not before physical effects crew had gone ahead and built it, and it went before the cameras. We made a large latex bladder for the stain, this is what Mike Wood has related. There were holes in the wall so we could actuate it manually from behind, and we had people strapped to the outside of the set, putting their hands through. During the scene, the stain was to have grown bigger and more amorphous, and the girl was supposed to roll through it from her bed. A more risque notion was to be the violation of Diane feeling by unseen forces as she involuntarily defied gravity in her upturned room. Wood did contrive the special harness to facilitate this movement in that position. But when the idea endangered the picture's PG rating, it too was scrapped. An alternate scene of JoBeth Williams writhing in bed remains in the film, but its darker implications are less apparent. So you can see that obviously back then, they never had PG-13 or even like the higher ratings. It went to R, but that's what this movie didn't want. The studio did enforce the mandate that the movie had to be a PG rating, which when you actually look at the movie and when he's tearing off his face, that is some horror stuff out of nightmares, and I'm actually surprised it got passed for a PG in the United States. Here in the UK it's always been a 15, but you can see why with the face peeling and certain other things like this scene was supposedly going to show. Scream. Back in '96, Scream dominated the horror scene when released and gave the slasher genre a stab in the heart. But the movie wasn't without people getting upset and over disturbedly because of certain scenes. The movie was censored by just around 7 seconds, which may not actually seem like a lot, but when you actually put in alternate footage, different camera angles, it can make it seem like, oh, nothing was really cut out. But what we will be talking about though specifically is the beginning and the opening kill. Steve and Casey Becker. Casey, she was obviously at home alone, watching a movie, waiting for her boyfriend Steve to come while she made popcorn, then she got the phone call. Hello, do I have the wrong number? Who are you? And obviously the most famous line, you hang up again, I'll gut you like a fish, understand? Which, to be honest with you, is still one of the best lines in any movie. But obviously, Steve was on the patio, and the scene that was cut out for Steve is that you actually see his guts fall out, roll down his legs, and onto the floor. This is the director's cut, which is actually kinda hard to get by. But with Casey, her death was also trimmed, which kinda sucks, because what they did with Casey, when she's hanging from the tree, it was meant to be just a slow move towards her. It was just going to be a steady cam shot, but because people found it too disturbing and they were upset with that, the camera was sped up, and as it is now in the movie, which is what, 5 seconds, something like that, when the original scene was meant to be 25 to 30 seconds long. A Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Dan's death in A Nightmare on Elm Street 5 is just a beauty to behold. The way that this was done was absolutely phenomenal. With Dan, he was meant to be merged with his bicycle, and the way that this special effect was done, it made him look a bit like Tetsu's Iron Man, and the way that everything was just intertwining with him, and the special effects are absolutely spectacular. But sadly, the censors didn't see it that way. When the censors saw it, they just went to town on the whole movie, with this scene in particular being the most disturbing scene that they cut. The special effects are incredible, as we see Dan fuse together with the machine, and as you can see from these screenshots, the look was everything from Tetsu Iron Man to morbid cyberpunk Rider. But good news though for everyone, this scene now is actually being fully reinstalled and you can actually get Nightmare on Elm Street 5 uncut on 4K. Cannibal Holocaust. This is the de facto cannibal movie and the censors absolutely hated it. They still do, as the majority of the cutscenes still haven't been reinstated worldwide. There's some videos out there where you may have some extra scenes, some little bit more of this scene goes on a little bit longer, but the actual full uncut version that was meant to come out in 1980 hasn't seen the light of day since then. With this, the disturbing scene is mostly all of the movie. Real animal cruelty. Throughout the movie we see real animals being killed for ritualistic or just for shock for the camera. But the actual gore effects for the human killings and the tribe killings are absolutely fantastic, especially back then in 1979 when this movie was made. We didn't really get into the 80s where you had Tom Savini, the Sultan of Splatter and all this kind of stuff, where these movies back then, if you showed something like Cannibal Holocaust, people were absolutely just shocked and blown away because they haven't seen such violence put on screen. But still to this day though, some of these scenes you will not be able to get your hands on. It's a bit like Event Horizon, where put somewhere in a salt mine in Transylvania, which is still a fantastic story. But sometimes the negatives just do not last. Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Back in the late 80s, New Line Cinema had the rights to make a brand new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, to which they wanted to make another money-making franchise, like their Nightmare on Elm Street series. But sadly, the movie that was released has had a lot of criticism. It had censors taking their scissors to it, left, right and centre, and to be honest with you, you could see that New Line just didn't want to go with it. The disturbing scene is actually the kitchen feast scene, where we see Ryan being hung up on the hooks while Michelle has her hands nailed to a chair and she watches as this plays out. The movie overall is gritty, grimy, and it's just a nasty and ugly movie through and through, as it was the late 80s, early 90s when this movie came out and was actually being made. New Line probably thought they were going to do something similar to their Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Have gory but very inventive kills which will make people go, wow, look at that. But instead, they hired someone who was known for splatterpunk novels, David Sho, which, don't get me wrong, David Sho is a great writer, and this kind of showed that he wasn't really going their way. He was like, no, we're doing a horror straight through and through. He tried taking it back to the original and not the second where this had that kind of humour. So New Line, after they released this, they kind of just washed their hands of it and got rid of it. So that's what we got, folks. Let us know down below if you've got any favourite scenes that were cut from horror movies for being too disturbing. As always, my name is Dan. Take care. I'll see you in the next video. That is, if we all survive.